Welcome to Some Stutter Law. I'm thrilled to have you join me on this incredible journey of self-discovery and empowerment. Some Stutter Law is Newfoundland and Labrador's first podcast about communicating differently. For more information about the Communication Collaborative or this podcast, you can find us at somestutterlaw.ca. In today's Some Stutter Law episode, I warmly welcome four previous guests of Some Stutter Law. Caroline Azalea and Sang Lam, a long-distance couple from two cultures living in different North American cities. Carolina, an extrovert who lives in Toronto and working as a community support worker, supporting people with disabilities. And Sang, an introvert who works as an IT tech living in New York City. We again welcome Robert O'Brien. Robert recently returned to his roots in Ireland. He works as a teacher and co-instructor of The Unblockables, an improv acting course for people who stutter with tightrope theater. Robert is also an author of a book called Just One More Drive, the true story of a stuttering homosexual and his race card. We also welcome Lee Lovett. Lee is a former stutterer, coach and co-founder of World Stop Stuttering Association. His slogan is, "If I can say any word, anywhere, anytime, I can say and love to say any word, anywhere, anytime." And I again welcome back Danny Magel. Danny is also a graduate of Lee's World Stop Stuttering Association. They call it, Lee will speak more about this later in the conversation, but it's the organization is called Stop Stuttering, Love Speaking. So welcome, people, and again, thank you very much for joining us on this special episode. Just to let our listeners know that the Newfoundland and Labrador Stuttering Association is a new association which I'm the chair of, and we are hosting our 6th annual Walk, Run, and Roll for Stuttering Awareness Anniversary Program fundraiser. It's scheduled for next weekend, Sunday, September 24th, 2023. The theme this year is I just want to be able to say my name. And for many people who stutters, that one statement hosts a plethora of emotional, psychological emotions. To most of us, the act of speaking is easy. We think of something to say, open our mouths, and the words just flow. But for many preschool, school-age children, adolescents, adults, and seniors who stutter, and others with communication disorders, just trying to say their name can be a physically, emotionally, and psychologically daunting and humiliating experience. This statement came from a story shared in the Speech and Stuttering Institute in Toronto in their 2018-2019 annual report. In this report, the Speech and Stuttering Institute shared the following story. In our summer intensive fluency program, the therapist asked each of the youths to say their name, say what they hope to get out of the therapy. One teen struggled more than the others to communicate, and his simple goal was heartbreaking. I just want to be able to say my name. Can you imagine how hard it is for him not being able to do what so many of us take for granted? You may know exactly what I mean. You know the frustration of not being able to speak fluently or not understanding your child when they are trying to speak. Treatment costs. People who stutter often require a minimum of 20 treatment sessions per year and up to 50 sessions per year. Speech-language pathologist treatment ranges from $100 to $130 per hour. This adds up to approximately $2,000 minimum and $6,500 maximum. However, many families do not have insurance, and the average family has only $500 of coverage per year. The NLSA is committed to continuing our annual bursary program, which was established in 2018. So since 2018, given that the Newfoundland Labrador is a volunteer board consisting of 8 board members, we have raised $10,000 since 2018, which goes towards bursary programs to assist people who stutter with treatment costs. So I welcome our guest today at the Some Stutter Law for the special episode. They have taken time out of their crazy schedules to come and share their stories about what it was like in their yesteryears or early or currently about the challenges that they encountered by saying their name. And you see, this statement for me, I'll just start this off, is I just wanted to say my name. I remember when, before I had treatment, I had a severe stutter. And one of the biggest challenges I had was trying to introduce myself. And people who stutter, stuttering has the primary and secondary characteristics. And the primary characteristics is the physical component of stuttering, which is the blocks, the repetitions, prolongations. But there's also secondary characteristics to it as well. And I remember way back then, whenever somebody asked me my name, besides exhibiting the physical characteristic, I also had the secondary characteristics. I would look, if let's say Robert asked me my name, I would look at the ceiling, point to the ceiling and say, look now, 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 look now. My name is, look now, look now, look now, look now, is Greg. And can you imagine the shock of horror that would appear on listeners' faces? But they didn't see anything, they didn't feel anything what I was feeling inside emotionally. So something like that stays with a lot of people stutter over the years and can do a lot of psychological and emotional damage. And so I would like to each of you to share your stories now about your earlier years of trying to introduce yourself, just trying to say your own name, and have a little conversation. So would someone like to volunteer?
Okay, sure.
Oh, okay. You can go first then. Yep, go ahead.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
So as a child, I often would have to say my name when at the start of the school year, and I'd also have to say my name a couple times because often people don't pronounce my name properly, and I, of course, at school you need to pronounce it properly because you're going to be spending a lot of time, right? And so I started school and I didn't understand I stuttered because my family tried to protect, right? And didn't express that, I have a difficulty. And when I started school, I kind of had a rude awakening because kids are very honest and they will laugh and taunt. And also the teachers were not very supportive because maybe they didn't have a deeper understanding. And so I really had to navigate speaking kind of by myself, because I kind of didn't feel to tell my parents because I'd be a burden. And so I'd talk when I needed to talk, so such as to say my name, but I didn't really talk, and I also didn't really have a social circle at school, so I had a vivid imagination, and I talked to my imaginary friends. But going back to introductions till today, people will say, "Oh, you forgot your name," and I'll kind of, depending upon the day, I'll say, actually, no, I do stutter. I actually had an immigration officer at the airport say, like, "Oh, you don't know your name?" And I said, "Oh, sorry, sir, I have a stutter." And the guy was so stunned, and he apologized about 10 times and just said, okay, go on, you know? And so I understand that I also have to be understanding, but sometimes people just, everybody seems to be on such a time pressure, and people don't exhibit patience. I also have to say that even though till today speaking can be a big challenge, and sometimes even when I'm with sang, I'll say, "Okay, you gotta speak up," and I'll be scared, but I also understand that the more I do it, I become desensitized, and also I face my fear, and I'm a better person for it.
Okay. Thank you very much for sharing that. Who would like to volunteer now?
I'll go next. Okay, so surprisingly, I started stuttering at age 18. For some reason, I made it a habit. Once one long block made another long block, and it just went there from so on. Um, because of it, I started to become more hesitant in life. I let my stutter hold me back. I didn't really want to engage with anyone out of fear for, stuttering, because as we all know, stuttering is embarrassing for a lot of people. And it basically held me back in life. It held me back from getting jobs. I basically stopped going to school because of it. I didn't want to be around anybody because I feared just that. And even though I felt that way, I still thank God every night because, in my circumstances, my stutter was a very mild case. I was a situational stutterer with long blocks, especially in front of my father for some strange reason. So it wasn't up until 2019 when I decided to do something about it because I hated always playing mind games with myself, wanting to have conversations with people. But in my mind, I would know I couldn't because I would always beat myself up saying, well, I can't have a conversation with this person because I'll stumble on this word, I'll block on this word, I can't say this. So I really got tired of it. So in February of 2019, I decided to see a speech therapist. And I was really excited to begin the journey to fluency. But after nearly a year of weekly sessions, I felt not an ounce of improvement whatsoever. So I basically stopped going because I didn't want to spend any more time or money wasting my time and my therapist's time. So after that, I really started to become more and more negative towards myself. I really started to beat up myself even more than I was before. I think it has to do with me putting myself out there, thinking that I was finally going to get help, thinking that I was going to talk fluently again, but it never came. And it wasn't until December of last year where I was at my wit's end with stuttering. I just wanted to basically stop my stuttering. I didn't want to live this way anymore. So I went on Reddit. And I don't know if you guys know, but there's a stuttering page on Reddit. And on that day, I saw the most heartfelt comment that I've ever seen. I actually direct messaged the user saying, thank you for your comment. It really inspired me. And if anything, what did you use to basically stop your stuttering? Because in that post, the user mentioned that they stopped stuttering. So the user replied a couple hours later saying, oh, thank you for your message. I greatly appreciate it. And the thing that helped me the most was a book called How to Stop Stuttering and Love Speaking by Lee Lovett. So I immediately went on Amazon, bought it. I joined his WSSA online program. And I can honestly say it was the greatest investment that I have ever made in my life because, as you guys can hear and see, I'm basically talking fluently. And I can honestly say if you diligently immerse yourself in these books and program, and then within a couple months, because for me, it took me 2 to 3 months to basically stop my stuttering. So if you diligently immerse yourself in his books and programs, you can stop stuttering. You can be more happy and live freely in the fluent world. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Danny.
You're welcome.
Who else would like to share?
Sure, I'll go next. Um, my name is Sang. My experience is similar to Carolina, where it goes all the way back to like middle school, where on the first day of class you have to introduce yourself, and what they'll do is go around the room, and then when you're in the middle, that's perhaps the scariest part because you have to wait for everyone in front of you uh, to go while your anticipation, your anxiety starts to go up. So once it gets to me, yeah, I would have I would have particular difficulty saying on my name because, as you know, your name is perhaps the most important thing to you. It is your identity. Now, sure, you can do word substitution for any other word, but uh, but when but not on your name. So yeah, so I remember I would have to do this every new class with new students. So yeah, so it's quite traumatizing, and yeah, and then I didn't really have a lot of friends back then, so I can relate with what Carolina was saying. That yeah, you know, since you're uh, like the only person there that that stutters, not everyone, can relate with you. So then, um, you know, going forward to present day, when anyone would ask for my name, um, that um, that feeling, it immediately returns. I would freeze for a bit. Um, uh, I would still struggle at times to like say my name, even though it has gotten better. But I feel like it is a lifelong journey. Everyone is at a certain level. So for me, uh, my ultimate goal isn't to maintain fluency, but just to be accepting of it. And yeah, and I am still working on that.
Thanks, Lodge, for sharing. Robert or Lee?
I can go next, if you like.
Oh, go ahead.
So I'm a covert stutterer, so I could hide my stutter. And I began stuttering in school at about 8 years old. And it was around saying my name. My full name is Robert O'Brien, and I would always block on the O. So it would be Robert O. And it's a kicker. As I get older and more experienced and educated, I look to the secondary characteristics that Greg talked about, the shame, the self-hate. Because it's our name, it's our identity. And I would fear saying my name. I would call myself Robert, or I remember once trying to start with O'Brien, Robert. And kids will laugh at you. Teachers in my day were shocked. They didn't have the training. They didn't know that I had a stutter. And even today, it still affects me. All these years later, it's on a bad day, the O in O'Brien will catch me out. And even coming back home, I came home 6 weeks ago because my father died unexpectedly. And I found myself making phone calls, talking to banks, estate agents, and that same fear, will I stutter on my name? What has changed for me, and Greg and myself have spoken about this and I write about it, for me personally, it's about forming a healthy relationship with my stutter and really accepting the fact on a bad speech day, I may block on my name. In the past, I would shut down, I would criticize myself, I would avoid. Today, I've gotten better at taking myself by the hand and just being like, okay, you've blocked on your name. You can cancel and go back, but it's okay. And that kind of gives me hope, especially now, because I feel like I'm back in school, having to deal with things I know nothing about, and that resonance is still there. But yeah, that's where I'm at with saying my name. 95% of the time, Robert O'Brien. 5%, I might block, and I'm okay with that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Robert. Lee?
Okay. Great to be with you guys and lady. I started stuttering when I was very young. I outgrew it, and it came back in my teens with a vengeance. And I couldn't say my name. I couldn't say a lot of things, but I found the name as something that kicked it off like a snowball. I remember it when it came back hardest. I was in class, and we were in English class, and they were asking people to read from the text, and I read a few lines, and I stumbled on a word, and everybody laughed. And so I then stumbled on the next word, and they laughed more. And it was a cycle, and after a while I couldn't talk at all. And the teacher said, thank you, and went on to somebody else. But it was there. Like with most people here, it was worse in some situations than in others. Mainly it's worse talking to groups, talking to strangers, talking to authority figures, talking on the phone. It was a nightmare. But if I wasn't in one of those pressure situations, I didn't stutter. So I had a group of people who thought, oh, Lee doesn't stutter. I mean, it never came up. And a group of people who said, oh, yeah, Lee is a character. He really stutters a lot. And then some who heard me a little bit. So I had all this mixture. I never stuttered at home. I was raised in a family that didn't believe in medicine. And that was part of our religion. I was 6 years in religious schools. We didn't believe in medicine. I was never in a doctor's office until I was way into my 20s and when I was married and everything else. So there was never any thought of any therapy or anything. And so when I was 21, I got married, and I was in law school. And by 23, I had 2 kids, and I was broke. And I graduated from law school, and ironically, my first case was assigned to me by the court, pro bono they call it, for free, for good. And so I was doing it for love. And I was trying a guy who had robbed the store, and he'd been caught outside the store with the merchandise and his weapon and a bunch of witnesses and incarcerated. The only thing worse for him than the evidence against him was I was his lawyer. And so we went to court, and as fate would have it, there were quite a few people in the courtroom waiting for cases to be tried. And so there might have been 50, 60, 70 people in there, including my father, who was a very good lawyer. He wasn't a rich man, but he was a very good lawyer and a very good speaker. And he had never heard me stutter. As the docket came up, we wore three-piece suits in those days, vests, coats, shirts, ties, everything. Before the trial was sitting there, we had to sit in the courtroom and wait for the case to be called for probably an hour. I was soaking wet, just thinking about what I was going to do. I didn't know. I was trapped. I was locked in. I couldn't get out of this. And finally the case was called, and I got up and I said, Your Honor, my name is, and I went into this, Lee Lovett, I couldn't say it. I went into this thing, but finally he said my name for me. Continue, Mr. Lovett. And I said, and my client's name is, which all these things, fine, he had to say my client's name. It snowballed into the case, and it was the worst experience of my life, and I wanted to die right there. And ironically, when it was over, of course I lost the case. When it was over, I left with my father the courtroom. He never said one word about stuttering to me. to the day he died. And that was probably maybe 10 years later. Not one word. Not one word. Meanwhile, I was married, I had 2 children, and I was broke. And I didn't know what to do. I had enough money. I always worked. I worked from the time I was 10 years old. So I had a few bucks, in the night. I had enough money for 6 sessions with a psychiatrist. As far as I know, there were no books or anything else. And there was certainly no internet, So I went to the psychiatrist and I explained the problem. And he said, and I said, can you help me? His name was Frank S. Caprio. He's been dead since the 60s or 70s. Anyway, he said, I don't know of any cure for stuttering, but he said, if I were you, I would learn self-hypnosis. I said, oh, what about that? Again, I know nothing about medicine. Zero. So he said, why don't you use Melvin Powers' book, A Practical Guide to Self-Hypnosis? It's a short book, and it lays it out pretty well, and he's helped a lot of people learn how to do self-hypnosis. It should help you.
Well, thank you very much, Lee, for this passionate conversation. Yeah. So, I mean, as I was mentioning before, that the Speech and Stuttering Institute is having our 6th annual A Million Things I Need to Say Walk and Run for Stuttering Awareness and Bursary fundraiser. And the key here is for treatment, because I remember when I shared my story about the the primary and second characteristics of my stutter, and about the emotional component. I think now I'm a senior now, and whenever I think of that moment, it brings back a lot of memories. And also, whenever I still have challenges in introducing myself. However, though, what gave me a lifeline was that when I went to the Speech and Stuttering Institute in Toronto, and I had taken the Fluency Plus program, and they helped me to, they provided me some speech targets, which I have used throughout life, okay? And, we all experience various treatments and targets. But for me, it has helped me to manage my program, and much like what Robert was saying as well, that, I mean, I'm the, my name is Greg O'Grady. I'm a professional covert stutterer, and I specialize in covert stuttering. So that was my yesteryears of trying to hide and camouflage my stuttering. But I think now about the early intervention is the key for those younger preschool, school age adolescents that would like to take therapy. Their parents want to take therapy. The problem is the cost of therapy. So we hope that those people who will be listening to this podcast will realize that the importance of being able to just say your name, and and hopefully it will sort of decrease the emotional component, and also it won't have the after effects in life, because we all know that stuttering affects every aspect of one's life: emotionally, psychologically, education, career opportunities, potential. So anyhow, before we close, would the rest of you like to say a few words?
Oh, I am just going to say that I am a person who stutters, and I am proud of being a person who stutters, and I believe that because I stutter, I am a better person, and I am happy, and I believe that the message, according to myself, is that it is okay to stutter, and I'm happy, and I'm being. Regardless, my stutter's a part of me, but not all of me.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. What we're talking about here is to raise money to help people choose that want to seek treatment and to help them. We all know there's no cure for stuttering, but if we can find some targets that can help us manage and control our stuttering, that's a huge success. A lot of people who stutter will not, with this treatment, will not have to go through all the emotional component that we've experienced over a lifetime. Sang, would you like to
Sure.
say a few words before we
As I
close?
mentioned previously, yeah, we are all in different parts of our journey. You know, some and also we as stutterers do have the option on like what our ultimate goal is like to be. As I mentioned previously, some would prefer to mainly take fluency. That can be their goal. My goal would like be just to simply accept it. You know, and that it is a part of you, and that you know you can learn to like code a a like exist with it, and you can still be fine.
I think it's important to remember options and choice. What works for some people will not work for every person. And I also acknowledge that SLPs and speech therapy is expensive. Parents reaching out to help their child, they'll pay any amount of money. So I think this kind of cause is very relevant in the sense that it gives people options. As people grow older, they'll figure out for themselves what is effective for them and what isn't. I think that has to be considered, and people need to have that option to choose and to explore. And I would stand by my own lived experiences that this is a journey, and fluency is a great goal to have. But having a stutter and living with it, speaking as someone who's gay as well, there's a certain acceptance and there's a certain necessity for accepting what it is, making peace with it, and then learning to dance with it in whichever form that takes. And if that is paying for SLPs and it works for a child who can't say their name, then I think that's certainly worth looking at, as are all the other options. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Robert. Appreciate your thoughts. Danny, before we close?
Yes, I'd just like to say, I know Lee might come off as a bit aggressive, but he's just a very passionate man that just wants to help. And I will always thank him for his books and program. And like he said, there's absolutely nothing wrong with stuttering. I mean, I did it for 15 years, and I actually commend people out there that actually stick with their stuttering and accept it, because when I was dealing with my own stuttering, I wish I could have an ounce of your confidence, because I let mine just hold me back. So again, I commend you guys for embracing it. I wish I could do it too. And I'm just going to end off by saying, if you really want to change like I wanted to change, then, check out Lee Lovett's stuff, because it will truly, truly inspire you and help me. I know in my case, and this is me speaking, not anybody else, he saved my life from self-pity. Because like I said, I let it hold me back in everything in life. And now I'm so grateful. So if I could spread his work to other people like me with my mindset who are not happy with themselves because of their stutter to improve, and then that's what I'm going to be doing for the rest of my life. So I just want to end off with that and saying thank you very much for allowing me to come on your great podcast again.
And as Robert was saying, and I really support, and we're all saying in many ways that there are so many options out there, and we have to respect other people's journeys to help with their own ways to find how they can control or manage their stuttering. Because based on my lived experience, because it's been one hell of an emotional roller coaster ride for me, but just to be here today and being able to manage my stuttering, and I have my good days and bad days like all of us. And I think Carolina said it very nicely. What comes to mind now is that we're all in many ways trying to survive stuttering, yet we're trying to embrace it as well. I think this is the ongoing challenge. But anyhow, thank you very much for your time today, and I'm looking forward to hearing this episode, because it was a very emotional, very passionate episode, and people need to know. And I think that's part of the problem is people don't really know that the stuttering affects all aspects of one's life, and it stays with you. As Sang was saying as well, whenever I'm asked my name, all the flood of emotions come back as well, And you have to sort of balance that out with trying to say a name, but also keep the emotional, the mental health component in check. And that's a huge area of this. So if the Newfoundland Labrador Stuttering Association can raise some extra funds to provide people with a subsidy for treatments, then we are helping. So thank you all very much for joining me today. I truly appreciate this.
Thank you, Greg.
Thank you.
you.